My name is Noel Hartley, and until that Tuesday afternoon, I believed my life was fairly ordinary. I lived alone in a quiet part of Seattle, spent my days editing manuscripts in sweatpants, and spoke with my parents every Sunday. Nothing unusual, nothing out of place, just a life I had built slowly and quietly, like arranging books on a shelf. But everything shifted at exactly 2:17 p.m. inside a neighborhood pharmacy on East Pine Street. I had been feeling unwell all morning, a flu-like pressure building behind my eyes. I forced myself to walk down the street to collect antibiotics from a prescription I barely remembered requesting. The air carried the sharp scent of disinfectant and plastic. I was scrolling through an email from a client complaining about M-dashes when someone stepped in line behind me. She was older, with gray hair tied into a bun, garden gloves visible from her tote bag. Ordinary, unremarkable, until she said, "You look just like my sister." I gave a polite, practiced smile, the kind you offer when strangers make familiar comments. Calm, courteous, slightly dismissive. I had heard it before. One of those common face remarks people make. But she didn't return the smile. Instead, her expression shifted. There was something else in her eyes, grief perhaps, or shock. Then she said 5 words I will never forget. She disappeared when she was 7. My chest tightened. I didn't respond. I stared ahead, silently urging the line to move. Then she said a name. Not Noel. Nothing close to it. It was a name I had never heard before, yet it sent a chill up my spine. And strangely, I didn't correct her. Beneath the noise of the pharmacy and the tension building inside me, a quiet thought surfaced. She might be right. I didn't sleep that night. After leaving the pharmacy, I returned home with the antibiotics still sealed in the paper bag, my thoughts louder than any fever. I replayed those few seconds repeatedly, the crack in her voice, the way she looked at me as if I were someone she had lost. And that name, the one that didn't belong to me, except now, I wasn't entirely sure. I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual, studying my reflection the way someone studies a familiar painting they can't quite place. My nose, my eyes, the faint scar above my eyebrow. I had been told I got it from falling off a swing as a child. My parents always said they rushed me to urgent care and stayed by my side through the stitches. But I couldn't truly remember it. I only knew the story, the photos that followed, and the way my mother used to tell it, like a repeated narrative. There were many things like that in my childhood, memories I accepted because they were told to me, not because I recalled them myself. At 33, I assumed I had moved beyond questioning my identity. I grew up in Tacoma and moved to Seattle after college. I worked as a freelance editor, mainly handling historical fiction and occasional memoirs. I appreciated structure, quiet routines, and grocery shopping on Wednesday mornings when stores were nearly empty. I had no siblings and no extended family I stayed connected with. Just my mother, Elise, and my father, Robert, who lived in a small house with a red door and a neatly maintained lawn. They loved me, consistently and without question. But there were gaps. I had no photographs of myself before the age of 3. Whenever I asked, my mother explained there had been a house fire. "It destroyed everything," she once said casually while stirring pasta sauce, as if it were a minor inconvenience. Old toys, baby photos, everything gone. "You were so young, you wouldn't remember." That was the explanation, one of many I never challenged. But that night, I did something different. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and took out a small velvet box. Inside was a USB drive containing scanned photos my mother had sent for a slideshow I created for their 30th anniversary. I plugged it in, my heartbeat unsteady. The earliest image showed me at age 3, sitting cross-legged in a park, wearing overalls and holding a melting popsicle. The file name read birthday03.jpg. I clicked through the rest. Every image started at age 3 or later. No baby photos, no hospital records, no first steps, just a child who seemed to appear suddenly, already old enough to face the camera. Then another detail came back to me, my birth certificate. I had seen it years ago while applying for a passport. I remembered how new it looked, almost as if it had been recently printed. I tried not to draw conclusions, but something felt wrong. My skin felt tense, my breathing shallow, and the name that woman spoke at the pharmacy continued to echo in my mind. The next morning, I called my mother. She answered in her usual warm tone. "Good morning, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" Fine, I replied. Just a little tired. We spoke briefly about ordinary things, the weather, groceries, a new neighbor with a noisy dog. Then I asked, "Do you remember where we lived before Tacoma?" There was a pause. "You mean before the fire?" "Yes." Another, longer pause. "I think it was somewhere in southern Oregon," she said finally. "Why do you ask?" "No reason," I said. But I noticed the change, a slight tension in her voice. And for the first time, I began to wonder what else she might not be telling me. I told myself not to overthink it, that it was likely just a coincidence, a simple case of mistaken identity. But that quiet, questioning part of my mind, the one I usually ignored, was now fully alert, rifling through every memory I had, as if searching for a flaw beneath the surface. By noon, my headache was worse than the infection I was supposed to be treating. So I called Daphne. She was my closest friend in Seattle, a pediatric nurse known for her direct honesty, something I usually valued and occasionally avoided. She arrived at my apartment in blue scrubs, holding iced tea and raising one eyebrow. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. "Maybe I have." I told her everything. The woman at the pharmacy, the name, the scar, the photos that began too late, and the conversation with my mom that morning. Daphne listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. Then she leaned back on my couch and said, "Okay, this is either the strangest story I've ever heard or the start of a serious documentary." "Don't joke." "I'm not, Noel. If someone approached me and started pointing out details about me they shouldn't know, I'd already be running a background check on myself." "I'm not doing that." "Why not?" That question stopped me. I didn't have a clear answer. Daphne picked up my laptop from the coffee table, opened it, and began typing with focus. "What was her name again?" "I don't know. She never told me hers. Only her sister's. The one she thinks I am." Daphne continued typing. "All right, what was the name?" I hesitated, then said it aloud for the first time. "Eleanor." Daphne paused. "Eleanor? What?" I don't know. She didn't say." We sat quietly for a moment. Then Daphne opened Facebook. "Let's check anyway." We searched different combinations: Eleanor missing, Eleanor 1990s, Oregon, Washington. Nothing relevant came up. Then I added, "She said her sister disappeared when she was 7. That was exactly how she said it." Daphne included the word missing and adjusted the timeline. That's when we found her. Lena McKinley, a retired elementary school teacher living in Seattle. Her profile picture showed her standing in a garden surrounded by sunflowers. Her bio read, "Advocate for missing children, sister survivor." I felt my breath catch. Daphne opened Lena's photos. We found an album titled Never Forgotten. We paused briefly, then clicked. The first image was a school photo of a girl, around 7 years old, missing her front teeth, with bright green eyes and a pink bike helmet over one shoulder. She looked like me. More than that, she looked closer to me than any early childhood image I didn't have. "I need to talk to her," I said quietly. "Yeah," Daphne replied. "You do." I spent the rest of the afternoon walking around my apartment. I wrote and rewrote a message to Lena at least 10 times before finally sending, "Hi, this is Noel. We met yesterday at the pharmacy. I think we should talk." She responded 10 minutes later. "Thank you. I was hoping you would." She suggested meeting the next morning. "A quiet place," she said. "Somewhere safe in case it becomes overwhelming." I chose the Blue Fern Cafe near Pike Street, close to where I lived. It felt neutral and familiar. That night, I didn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't fear keeping me awake. It was something else, something I couldn't yet define, but I knew it carried weight. The Blue Fern Cafe smelled of cinnamon and aged wood, the kind of place where everything felt slower. I arrived 10 minutes early and took a corner table by the window. My hands kept moving, from the spoon to the sugar packet, then to the edge of a napkin. When Lena walked in, I recognized her immediately. The same gray bun, the same steady gaze. But she seemed different, more fragile, as if she hadn't rested in days. She approached, holding a large canvas tote and a slim manila folder tucked under her arm. I stood to greet her. We didn't hug. She simply nodded, as though any sudden movement might disrupt the moment. "Thank you for meeting me," she said softly. "I wasn't sure I would," I replied. She sat down carefully. Her posture remained tense. Her voice remained steady, but her hands shook slightly as she set the tote on the chair beside her. "I want you to know, no matter what comes from this, I'm grateful you reached out." We sat quietly for a moment until the waitress approached. I ordered tea. Lena didn't order anything. She didn't even glance at the menu. Then she reached for the folder. "These are copies," she explained. "I didn't want to overwhelm you, but I thought you might want to see some of it." She opened the folder and began placing pieces of a life on the table, one she believed had once been mine. Newspaper clippings, missing posters, a photo of a girl on a red tricycle with white streamers, another of a child asleep on a couch holding a gray stuffed rabbit. Each image landed heavily. I recognized the rabbit. I couldn't explain how, but I knew the texture of its ears, the worn thread near its neck. "You used to call him Button," Lena said, noticing my reaction. "You never went anywhere without him." I placed my hands flat on the table. "She went missing in June of 1996, Lena continued, "from our backyard in Eugene. I left her on the swing set for 5 minutes to answer a call. When I came back, she was gone." "I don't remember any of this," I said. "You were 6. Trauma can do that. And sometimes people make sure those memories stay hidden." That statement unsettled me. Lena paused, then reached into her tote and took out one final item, a plastic case. Inside was a home DNA test kit. "I've already done mine," she said. "I didn't want to pressure you, but if you're open to it, this can give us answers." I stared at the kit. It looked simple, just swabs, a barcode, a small box, but the decision felt significant. "What happens if I am her?" I asked. "What happens to the people who raised me?" Lena remained quiet for a moment. "I don't know," she said finally. "I'm not here to disrupt your life. I just never stopped searching, not for a single day." Her eyes reflected emotion, but she didn't cry. "You may not remember me," she added, "but I remember you. The way you asked for apple slices without the peel, the way you fell asleep in the car holding my sleeve." I felt unable to move or respond, so I reached for the kit. As I swabbed the inside of my cheek with unsteady hands, something shifted within me, like a door opening slightly to a space I had never allowed myself to enter. The results arrived on a Monday. The subject line was simple: "Your DNA report is ready." I opened it quietly. No build-up, no reaction, just data, a 99.9% match. I was Eleanor McKinley. I sat on my kitchen floor, knees drawn in, letting the information settle. There was no immediate anger, not even grief, just the quiet realization that my identity had been built on something incomplete. 2 days later, I drove to my parents' house, the Hartleys. My mother opened the door, her expression changing the moment she saw me. My father was already seated inside, a folded newspaper on the table as if maintaining routine. I handed them the printed report without speaking. My mother spoke first. "We were told you had been abandoned," she said. "A friend of a friend mentioned a child who needed a home. We moved, changed names." My father avoided eye contact. "We believed no one was looking." "She was," I said, "for 27 years. My mother began to cry. "We loved you." "I know," I replied, "but love doesn't erase what was taken." Their silence confirmed what I needed to understand. They may not have known everything, but they had chosen comfort over truth. "I'm not going to involve the police," I said calmly, "but I need distance. I need time to understand who I am without your version of it." I left without continuing the conversation. Back at my apartment, I looked at the name on the DNA report. It didn't feel fully mine yet, but it didn't feel incorrect either. That night, I updated my email signature to Noel McKinley Hartley. 2 identities, 1 person, a truth that finally had a name. Lena invited me to dinner the following weekend. "Nothing formal," she said. "Just lasagna and a few people who have been waiting a long time." I nearly declined. Part of me was still in my parents' living room, hearing the word abandoned used as an explanation. Another part wasn't sure I was ready to face a second family, or whether I deserved to, but I went. Lena's house was modest, 2 stories, with ivy growing along one side. It smelled of baked tomatoes and basil, and the walls were covered with framed photos, more than the space could hold. Images of a life I hadn't lived. Birthdays, holidays, summers by the lake. Her voice trembled slightly when she introduced me. "This is my sister." The word felt unfamiliar. Margot stood behind her, holding a dish. Her hair was darker than mine, shorter, framing her face. She studied me for a moment before placing the lasagna on the table. "I made dessert too," she said. "Apple crumble. You used to like it." I nodded, unsure how to respond to memories that didn't belong to me. Dinner felt unusual in a quiet way. No raised voices, no visible emotion, just people adjusting to each other's presence. Jude, Margot's 10-year-old son, sat beside me, occasionally glancing at me as if I might disappear. Afterward, Margot asked if we could step outside. We stood on the back porch under string lights. "I never stopped thinking about you," she said. "I was 8 when you disappeared. I checked the swing set every morning for a year. I didn't know how to respond." She handed me a small wooden box. "These were yours." Inside, there was a summer camp bracelet, a crayon drawing of a whale, and a gold locket with faint fingerprints on the clasp. I held it carefully. I didn't recognize any of the items, but I held the box as if it contained pieces of a language I had forgotten how to understand. Margot gently touched my arm. "You don't have to become her again. You get to decide." I glanced back through the glass door. Lena was clearing plates, and Jude was still at the table, finishing dessert. "I don't know who I am yet," I said quietly. "That's okay," she replied. "We'll wait." For the first time in weeks, I believed that. I didn't remove the name Noel. I couldn't. It was the name I grew up with, on library cards, job forms, and every note my parents left on the fridge. It carried real experiences and connections, even if part of its foundation was based on something taken. That identity was still valid. But Eleanor, the child who went missing, matters too. She existed before anyone tried to rename her. Even though I don't remember her swing set, her stuffed rabbit, or the yard she disappeared from, I now understand that she was deeply loved, actively searched for, and never forgotten. I now live between those two names. Noelle handles daily responsibilities, work, emails, bills. Eleanor exists in the locket I keep by my bedside, in Lena's stories, and in Margot's thoughtful messages. Every Tuesday, Lena and I meet for coffee. She brings old clippings and memories, but never pressures me. Some days we talk, other days we sit in silence. Either way, she remains consistent, patient, and kind. Margot checks in regularly with quiet care. Her messages are simple but meaningful. Sometimes a photo of Jude's latest drawing, sometimes just a sentence. "You're still my sister. You always were." As for the Hartleys, Robert and Elise, we meet once a month. Dinner is measured but honest. They no longer avoid the truth. They're in therapy, and so am I. I haven't fully forgiven them, but I'm also not carrying their guilt. That responsibility was never mine. What I've come to understand is this. You don't always choose how your story begins, but you can decide who helps shape what comes next. My legal name is now Noelle McKinley Hartley. It may not be simple, but it reflects the truth. It acknowledges both the life I lived and the one I lost. I no longer feel uncertain about who I am. I feel complete.